Here we are with the joy of being in Revelation 21 again. And we're just going to read 2 verses today because these are just so precious. So we've seen that there's a bride and a bridegroom and a city and a dwelling place of God, like the temple of God. God is dwelling with his people intimately as husband and wife. And we pick up these verses in verse 4. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things have passed away. My goodness, I mean, here is a picture of us in the new creation, and it's a picture of a very happy bride, and not sort of surface sentimental happy that you can be at just a nice wedding because it's nice food and a nice atmosphere, but there's something deeply rotten, taken away, wiped away. So there's a joy in this marriage, isn't there?
There is, and I mean, in one sense, how do you add to that? Really, I mean, it just feels like we could just read it for 8 minutes. But this, I think, when we suffer personally in this life, and when we ever try to minister to suffering people, I think every Christian reaches for this verse at some point, don't they, in their lives? Because this is such a wonderful promise, and it's so personal. He will wipe away tears from their eyes. It's like a father, who's nursing a child that's just fallen over or just been bullied and they're crying. They take the thumb, don't they, and they wipe it from the cheek. It's not just stop crying now, or I have the power to take your tears away. They're actually wiped off the face in the most intimate way, and that's because, as he says in verse 5, everything is being made new. And the old order of things is going. So in this life, Paul says, we weep with those who weep, we mourn with those who mourn. We are in the old order of things, and there is an appropriate weeping in this age. In fact, we're commanded to weep in this age. But in the age to come, that time will have passed, and it will be the time for tears of joy and rejoicing, because the curse has been lifted finally.
Yeah, and I think. We've just got to understand how incredibly wonderful this picture of God is.
Yeah.
As you say. I mean, there aren't gods like this, are there?
No.
I mean, most gods are, the myths of gods are fairly sort of angry or grumpy or selfish. This is a very deeply in love God with his people. He personally wipes away the tears.
Yeah.
So this is the great thing about Jesus, isn't it? Jesus absolutely knows what we're going through. He understands. Here's a God who became man to understand the depth of our problem. Here's Jesus that was misunderstood by his family. He understands people that are misunderstood by the family. Here's Jesus who understood what it was to be betrayed by a best mate. He understands those things. And here it's put in this sort of beautiful way, as you say, this wiping away the tear from their eyes and dealing with those things. No more mourning, no more crying, for the old things, no more death. It's often said that this is the only city without a graveyard.
Yeah, that's
great. You go around every city in every part of the world, and it'll have a graveyard.
Yeah.
There's no graveyard here.
No, and as you say, Jesus knew what this was like. I was just thinking of those as you were talking there. He himself wept, didn't he? He knew what it was to feel tears on his cheeks, and he has the authority to do this. That's why he's the one on the throne, isn't it? In verse 5, he who was seated on the throne is saying this because. Every person, has longed to have the authority to take away sadness in the people they love. When you see someone you love grieving, you want the power to take it away and to restore happiness to them, but we don't. And that's one of the frustrations of this life. But Jesus does, and he will. And
the liberty here, this sort of passing away of these things, is going to be we will never know. We can't know anything like it.
No,
because there's always, in everything we do, even the most wonderful, when we're at our laughing, and at our most relaxed, if you like, and enjoying and most secure sort of things going on in this life, there's the underlying beat of death and mourning and crying and pain, isn't there? And it's almost, you can't hardly do even good things. I mean, I always think about sunbathing. It's a lovely thing to be on holiday with a book and a drink, sitting in the sun reading. But you can't do it for long without burning up.
Yeah.
And then you have to go under and put some cream on and hide in the shade. And there's always an underlying pain or problem in everything.
The threat of cancer from it. And
and when that's taken away, that whole underlying sort of thing the freedom must be massive.
Yeah, I think that's right, and it's one of those things, as you say, which is hard for us to fully grasp what a world without that is going to look like. And it's almost as if Jesus anticipates that, because he says at the end of verse 5, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. And so you can imagine Christians thinking, well, I would love that to be the case, but is that really possible? Is that really going to happen? Or non-Christians might look cynically and say, yeah, it's just pie in the sky when you die, isn't it? But actually, Jesus has almost, as I say, anticipated that and said, no, because of the resurrection, this is true. Write it down. At this point, I want to just underline that what I've said there is true.
And I'm sure there will be pie.
Yeah.
And I like a pie myself. Anyway, we'll come back tomorrow.